Some of you may be familiar that when I was in college, I used to run track and field, and I still run occasionally and race as well every once in a while. But when running a race in track, one of the best parts of any race is the kick at the finish, to the finish line. You get to that last stretch, and it's all about just giving whatever you have left, just putting in the final push to get to the finish line as best you can. And we have a very beautiful opening prayer at the beginning of Mass today that reminds me of this kind of kick to the finish. And we prayed, "As the feast of our salvation draws ever closer, so may we press forward all the more eagerly towards the worthy celebration of the Paschal mystery." So this idea of kicking to the finish and finishing well is part of our Lenten journey. May we, strive, especially the closer we get to Easter, to finish well, and to prepare ourselves for the joys that come with Easter. But this is also true in the journey of our life, that as we approach the finish line, may we push harder. May we push for the end, for preparing ourselves for the joy of heaven. I think that's something for us to consider, but it's also how God works in our lives as well. I think towards the end of our lives, in our golden years, God likes to work overtime. He works overtime to sanctify us and to make us holy. In that way, it's very much like a long distance race. The faster you go, faster towards the end. And we see that, from a child growing to maturity, they grow in holiness through learning that the world doesn't revolve around them, and they learn how to make sacrifices and to love other people through their family, through their work, and a variety of other ways, through their friendships, learning how to make sacrifices for other people. But then as we enter our golden years, I think God, He works overtime, and it gets even faster in terms of how He wants to make us holy and prepare us for heaven. And in large part, it does come through the sufferings that we endure as we get older. There's an experience of humiliation at times through our dependence upon other people, either because of our physical ailments, we can't do everything that we used to do. Maybe we experience a greater loneliness, whatever it is, but oftentimes as we get older, we experience greater and greater sufferings, which God, I believe, really wants to use to make us holy and prepare us for heaven. In the readings today from the prophet Jeremiah, and the psalm in particular, we heard about this hardness of heart, how people harden their hearts to the Lord, despite the fact that He's trying to save them, and He's working to save them. But instead, they harden their hearts to what the Lord is trying to do. And I believe in our path of sanctification and the suffering that we endure, that can be an effect. We can let our hearts be hardened by the difficulties and the hardships that we endure. But how can we prevent that? How can we work with the Lord rather than harden our hearts when we encounter difficulties? I think the key comes from our responsorial psalm. "If today you hear His voice, harden not your hearts." That these two things are opposed to each other, listening to the Lord's voice and hardening our hearts. Because if our hearts are hardened, we can't really hear the Lord's voice. But also, if I open my heart and listen to the Lord's voice, that will soften my heart. That will console me in the difficulties that I endure. And that's because I'm praying, I'm listening to the Lord. I'm letting His voice of love speak to me and to console me and to carry me through the difficulties and sufferings that I'm enduring. Jesus tells us in the gospel today that whoever is not with me is against me, and whoever does not gather with me scatters. And so I think it's important for us to realize, in life we have two options. It's whether the things that happen to me in life, I can either let them harden my heart, or I can turn to the Lord, crying out in my need, listening to His voice, receiving the love that He wishes to give me.